Eggs is a podcast about all things creative, regardless of what that means to you. From the creativity involved in launching a business, building a brand, crafting an entertainment career, or whatever, we talk about the process of growing your egg from start to finish. Today's show is brought to you by Goodside Skateboards. Go to www.goodsideskateboards.com for great deals on decks and awesome t-shirts and pretty much anything you can think of. Well, not quite. Anyways, enter Egg Show, that's EGGSSHOW, when you check out. And get 20% off? Yeah, I think it's 20%. Anyways, Egg Show when you check out to get 20% off at goodsideskateboards.com. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at Deli Fresh Threads. They're a Florida-based clothing company. They specialize in t-shirts and other apparel. And they celebrate what they call the King of Meals, the sandwich. Check out their website, delifreshthreads.com. And make sure you enter Egg Show when you go to check out for 10% off. That's EGGSSHOW. Get 10% off when you check out. All right, delifreshthreads.com.
We gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We've got a big one in the works today. And speaking of big ones,
slip?
Yeah, it was. Our guest today is a guy named Biggie Bencomo. He's the founder and entrepreneur behind Deli Fresh Threads. It's a t-shirt company out of Orlando, Florida that does basically sandwich-based t-shirt art, and we'll get into that because it sounds a little vague, but we'll get into it and you'll understand completely by the time we're done with this. So the way we got to know Biggie, the reason we contacted him is has it already been months back?
Yeah, it's been a few months.
We had a guy on the show, a guy named Will Truren. He's a art director designer up in New Jersey, and he. I had met him, and you can go back and listen to the show for the whole backstory. But basically, I met him in Cleveland. We talked in Cleveland about Deli Fresh Threads a little bit as a source of inspiration for him, and he really liked the brand. So a year later, when we had Will on the show, afterwards we were asking, hey, who do you think would be a good guest? Who are people we could contact that you might know that could help us move the show along a little bit? And one of the names he gave us was Biggie here. And so we reached out to Biggie a few weeks ago and set this up, and he was happy to come on the show, and we're happy to have him. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Anthony Biggie Bencomo of Deli Fresh Threads.
How's it going?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
All right, Biggie, welcome to the show. Glad to have you, man. So let's start at the beginning, I guess. Can you tell us who you are? Okay, now we know a little background. We know you're from New Jersey, but now you're living in Orlando. How did you end up there of all places? When did you go? Why did you stay? Tell us a little bit of background.
Yeah,
about
so my name's Anthony, also known as Biggie, and I'm originally from New Jersey, and was one of those things where my dad got sick like in '94, and it was just one of those things where we asked him like, hey, where do you want to go? And he was like, I want to move to Florida, and we have family in Florida. I'm Cuban, so it was one of those things where it just made sense. And what we would do is we would go down and visit, and every time we would go down and visit, I would also go and visit different colleges because I was in high school around that time. And then, so my parents knew I was going down, and I fell in love with. I looked at schools in Jersey, and I also looked at all the major state schools in Florida, and I fell in love with a school here in Orlando, University of Central Florida. It's at the time it wasn't what it is now. Right now it's like the second largest school in the entire country. Which is insane because no one knows who the hell we are. But it was one of those things where I fell in love with it. And so I went to school here for 4 years, studied marketing. And it was my folks were like, hey, are you going to come down? And I'm like, nope, I'm staying here. I love it here. I like the fact of Orlando that it's like a very diverse crowd because it's very transient. A lot of people are obviously very few are from Orlando. So a lot of people are coming in and out from different states. So it's kind of definitely a melting pot of sorts when you look at this city. And the big thing that I love about Orlando and why I'm a big pro Orlando person, I guess, is the fact that there's more to us than just Mickey Mouse and Harry. There's a bunch of different suburbs and communities that take a lot of pride. And it's cool because we're becoming more and more well known when it comes to food. To becoming a big foodie town, besides being in the area, the touristy areas. You can be a tourist or you could be a local, and not be stuck with all that I-4 traffic that we have.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I do have to say, the irony is not lost on me that you're Cuban or of Cuban descent. Cuban is maybe the best sandwich, and you're, a sandwich artist, I guess. By and large, folks know you as, a T-shirt maker, a sandwich aficionado. But was that always kind of your calling? How'd you end up in the shirt game versus, being a sandwich artist?
So since I went to school at UCF, I became very passionate, super diehard UCF guy, and I had a whole bunch of friends. And I had this idea for at the time wrestling was really big and NWO was huge. And I had this idea for a UCF shirt that just basically looked like NWO because of UCF, 3 letters, just like NWO. I went to 3 or 4 shops that sell UCF stuff, said, hey, I have this awesome idea. You should make it. And no one wanted to make it. And so one of my roommates was like, dude, he's like, why don't you just do it yourself? Just start a business and do it. And so me and 2 other buddies, it kind of worked out great because one buddy was accounting, one was technology. He was a computer science person, computer engineer, and then I was the marketing part. And it was way ahead of its time in the sense that it was right when online shopping was becoming more known, but it wasn't as popular or as kind of normal as it is now. And so I did that when I graduated college, and and it was just something I loved. It was something I was passionate about. I had no problem packing orders at night and doing stuff like that, and then selling when we would tailgate at games. But the bad thing about doing college athletics is if your team sucks, then your sales suck. And I've experienced during that time, I experienced perfection. A lot of teams try to go for perfection. I went perfection. Our team went perfect, but went perfect 0-12, not winning a game. So and because of that, my team went 3-9 and 0-12. And being so a kind of an apathetic fan base, I was almost ahead of my time. And so because of that, I ended up it just didn't work out. But I always had a passion and love for T-shirts. Time goes by, and I got married, had kids, and it was just one of those things where I told my wife, I was like, I enjoy my job, but it's a corporate job, and it's very monotonous and very process driven. And I go, there's a part of me dying. And everything else in life is good, but I need that outlet. And so the big thing that ended up happening was I kind of was like, I need something, I need an outlet. And so I've always loved sandwiches. I'm obsessed with sandwiches. And so because of it, we ended up, I ended up going, let me sandwich my 2 passions, T-shirts, sandwiches, and create my own brand. And then but it took me a while to get there. I basically, for a long time, it was what do I want to do? I started reading, Gary Vaynerchuk books. Crush It was one of the big books I read about doing stuff with your passion. And then at that same time, I was seeing stuff with with Johnny Cupcakes and everything and listening to him. And it just was one of those things where I just, it was kind of it just clicked. And I said, this is what I need to do. I need to come up with a brand. No one else is doing this. And food is so popular that why not create my own food type, themed clothing brand with sandwiches.
So did you cook a lot as a kid, or
I didn't cook.
Where's the love for sandwiches come from?
Where's the love of sandwiches? Yeah, so my dad made me sandwiches all the time. Made me lunch sandwiches for breakfast. All the time. I had it for lunch, and I always made things into sandwiches. Like everything I would come up with would come into a sandwich. Like I would do spaghetti. Like my mom would make me spaghetti. I would make them into spaghetti sandwich. So I would do with the bread.
That sounds really good,
right? Have you ever done it? Like, let me tell you, I have a restaurant that does it. If you next time you go to an Italian restaurant, ask for a meatball sub, and then just say, hey, can I get a side of spaghetti with that? But then what you ask them to do is ask them for like a small side of spaghetti, have them cut up the meatballs and the spaghetti together, and then put it on the bread, and then have them put cheese on top. That thing is so flipping awesome.
You throw it in the broiler real quick.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So let me tell you, I make everything into a sandwich. I pretty much have always had that way. And ironically, my mom and dad were always the type where sandwich, that's not for dinner. You don't have sandwiches for dinner. You have a real meal, for dinner. But my brain would always go there. And so as time went on, it just basically just grew. And I just, became obsessed with it, where I was always making something into a sandwich. I make desserts into sandwiches. Cupcakes become sandwiches to me. I pretty much see sandwiches.
Well, you got Thanksgiving coming up. You got to do the mashed potatoes and turkey.
Heck yeah, man! I call them little pilgrim sliders, is what I call them. I use the leftover dinner rolls, and I make them that way. Those are my favorites. And then, even though it's not sandwich related, there's another thing that I do that's phenomenal. We do with our leftovers. So, like my two favorite things for leftovers when I do Thanksgiving, especially with this coming up, the pilgrim sliders, and then I also do this thing that I found online. It was leftover egg rolls, Thanksgiving egg rolls. Man, those things are flipping amazing. Like, I almost want to have Thanksgiving a week before so that I have those leftovers to make the egg rolls and have Thanksgiving sandwiches during that time.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all.
The practice turkey and just have it wait.
Exactly. Super, super easy stuff. I mean, it's amazing.
I sense a new T-shirt coming out.
Yeah. I've actually, it's funny. I'm trying to figure out a way to do a Thanksgiving shirt. I'm actually playing right now. I tried something for the first time to do something like more holiday themed, but that's something that is very specific. So what I did was I actually worked with Will from Noble Folk Design, and he created a holiday hoagie shirt. It's called It's called a holiday hoagie, but it says ho ho hoagie, and it's an ugly sweater. And we did it as a pre-order, and we did it for I did it for a pre-order for a few weeks. I already have it printed. It's already at the printer, and the goal is to be able to get those shirts out like that last week of November for folks. And I basically just trying something new to see if I can try to because I definitely want to do more things like this, more specific, and maybe do it more as a pre-order, so that way I'm not stuck with a whole bunch of inventory. Because the one thing I told my wife was about this when I decided I wanted to do this was, hey, listen, if I open a sandwich shop and I don't sell, my inventory spoils. But if I do T-shirts as sandwiches, then they're just sitting on a shelf. They're not spoiling. I can at least figure out a way to sell them. So that's really kind of how I made more sense to be able to sell it to my wife. Like, hey, I'm going to do a T-shirt brand. What do you think of that?
All right. Well, next year I expect to see the Pilgrim Slider shirt around Thanksgiving.
You bet.
So, well, hey, you've covered a lot of these points, but this is sort of the meat of our show. I talked to you a little bit before we got on the air about the purpose of the show and how we use the egg as sort of a metaphor for moving your product, business, brand, whatever, forward from sort of coop to table. Can you talk a little bit about your process, talk about some of the trials and tribulations you've encountered along the way, and sort of talk us a little bit through, in short form. You don't have to kill yourself over this, but sort of start, from the beginning and get to modern day, and just tell us about that process a little bit.
Sure. So I really, because of the fact that I was so into this, and after reading the books and really making sure that I didn't want people to think that I was actually, a copy of something else. Obviously I know, the whole idea of copying someone is a form of flattery. Well, I don't believe in that. I'm all about giving you flattery, but I'm not here to copy you. So I really made it a point to, I honed in on a bunch of stuff. It took me a while. It took me probably a good 6 months to maybe 6 to 10 months just everything. I thought of everything, and I had it on my phone. I would write down notes of like, how is my branding going to be? How's my website? What are blog posts that I'm going to write about this? I wanted people to see. I wanted to figure out any way I could to have people to see my passion. I figure if I can have people think of me and think of sandwiches, I'm doing the right thing. So I thought of everything of like, how am I going to package my shirts? What shirts am I going to use? Everything to that point. I even went and asked different artists and different brands that I admired. What are some tips and tricks that you learned that would help a different brand, a small brand coming up? And I basically just I just basically fed my brain with everything and anything. And while I was at it, and that's kind of how it went. It just kind of developed, building from there.
Well, and can I ask you a couple things about just a couple of points that you touched on there? First, is doing your research. Yep. Second is about the way you package your shirt specifically, because I think it's really funny and it's really on brand. But I think the talking through how, from start to finish, basically from the design of the shirt to the way it's packaged and shipped, really stays on brand and keeps things together. And then finally, can we elaborate a little bit more on this reaching out to other people, drawing inspiration, how receptive people were, and that kind of thing?
Sure. I went the route of like, I thought of everything. I basically became obsessive, and a lot of people didn't know what I was trying to do. I would ask the Facebook question like, hey, when your parents packed you lunch, what was your favorite thing that they packed for you, or a favorite little thing that they did? And
Doritos.
I would take note of this Doritos. Yeah, that's bonus. If I had a meatloaf sandwich, if my mom made meatloaf the night before and I got a meatloaf sandwich with Doritos, that was like, I'm winning right there.
With a Twinkie or
oh yeah, I was a big Suzy Q guy because the Suzy Q is. Have you ever had a Suzy Q from Hostess?
Oh yeah,
it's like a sandwich. It's a cake sandwich. I mean, it was like I loved them. But what I did was I basically everything how I looked at everything is I doodle everything because I rely on artists to do my stuff. So I have like the vision and the thought, but I'm not a good artist. So I basically doodle everything. And so when I come up with something, I basically doodle what I want and what I see and what I envision. Then I pretty much have been following a variety of different artists on Instagram and social media and just kind of seeing their style. And then what I've kind of done is if there's someone like who's really good at typography and things like that, then I'm like, okay, well, I want this design to be typography. I want your skills, what you're good at. I want to be able to take advantage of that. But I also want to have my vision and your flavor, I guess, on the design. And so that's how I've kind of done all my designs. But a lot of them are just me just thinking kind of wacky. Like I have the hoagie design. My Argyle design is basically I was wearing an Argyle sweater. I looked at that and I envisioned bread slices instead of diamonds. Things like that are kind of where I went. Same thing with like I have a hoagie shirt that says Hoagie's a real American hero, kind of like G.I. Joe.
Nice.
So things like that are things that kind of got me. And then I kind of then became even more like I do a series called Sandwich City series, because I'm into sports and I'm into cities and their sandwiches. So I kind of started doing like cities and their sandwiches. So like the Cuban sandwich is a Miami Dolphins styled shirt. Rather than it being my name, like Deli Fresh Threads and a Dolphins type of logo, I did the Cuban because my whole brand is about honoring and respecting and showcasing and giving love to what I call the king of meals. So I basically am willing to, there's some branding when it comes to me, but I'm really showcasing the sandwich. And so what I've done is I've done a bunch of different designs that are sports themed based on those cities and their sports and their sandwiches. So like New York, I think of pastrami and rye when I think of New York. And when I think of like Philly, I think of cheesesteaks and the Phillies. Or like the Chicago, I think of like, Italian beef is what I think of. And so I made different concepts and different ideas and designs because I also didn't want to be like a one-trick pony or a one, you're just do this. I wanted, just like a menu would be diverse in sandwiches, I wanted my designs to be diverse. And that's all the reason why I also use a variety of different designers, because I want different styles to showcase these sandwiches like you would on a regular menu type of say.
Yeah. So go into a little bit more in depth about your packaging. I think it's really cool how you kind of roll the shirt up like a hoagie and send that out, and I think that's pretty brilliant.
So Yeah, and so what I did was my brain was since I'm basically packing a sandwich, I really was like, how am I going to do this? And when you actually get something from me online, I make it so that people get it like I'm actually packing like either a mixture of mom or dad made you a sandwich, or you went to a deli. So when you get something from me, every shirt is wrapped like the sandwich that it's supposed to be. So a Cuban is wrapped how a Cuban would be wrapped if you got it at a deli. A hoagie, cheesesteak, all those are wrapped kind of like your traditional hoagie style, and everything else is wrapped square like a regular like ham and cheese or PB&J would be. But it's wrapped.
Just don't cut it in half.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That would be. I'd get a lot of returns then. But I wrap everything up. It's taped with deli tape and has like a sticker that says certified or approved by Biggie is what it says. And then I have everything from like snack size bags with like business card. We had my business card. What I did was I made it. It actually one side of it is the business card. The other side of my card is actually it's a hand numbered card that says Sandwich Eaters Club card member. I wanted everyone to be a card carrying member of the Sandwich Eaters Club. And then I put like stickers and buttons. So like I call those chips. And then there's like a napkin inside. So when you get it and you actually open this box, you're actually pulling out a bag with a deli note in the back, with like a checkout deli note with like a handwritten note from me. So when you open it, you're experiencing like you're opening a sandwich at a deli type of thing, or even just a homemade packed lunch. But it's coming from me or Biggie Bread, whoever you want to think it's from.
Well, and I think that's like a real good bit of advice to sort of share with our audience is just this idea of brand consistency and carrying it all the way through to the end. It'd be one thing to have a sandwich T-shirt, but if they just received it in a heat sealed bag or something, you're losing a bit of that experience there at the end. But in your case, you're carrying it from design all the way through packaging. And I've got to be honest. I mean, maybe I eat at Subway way too often because I didn't even realize subs are wrapped differently by the subs. So,
yeah.
I'm apparently getting my sandwiches at the wrong spot. No offense, Subway.
I tell you what, just based off of your Instagram feed, I can't look at it like after 10 o'clock at night because I get cravings. I gotta go get a sandwich.
And to be honest, like that's kind of I really have taken it to the point of thinking of it as like almost like a Food Network chef or something like that, because I actually showcase my designers, like a lot of the things, and you were asking about what are some things that you learned when talking to other brands. They're somewhat willing to give you some generic information, but they're not. A lot of them are kind of close to the vest, and so a lot of them were very good at just telling me generic things that that are important to know. But like if you start asking specifics, sometimes people don't want to tell you like who your designer was, who is the printer of this shirt, or what shirts are you using. So for me, one of the things that I wanted to do was just like a chef would actually go and give you a recipe of their food, you still go and eat their food at their restaurants. I actually wanted to make sure I showcase my designers. So I pretty much what I do is I when I post a new design, I actually will tell you. I try to tell a story of why I came up with the design. So like what made me come up with this idea. Maybe if it's like depending on what it is. If it's a grilled cheese, I give you a history of the grilled cheese. But if it's something having to do with talking about, just in general, like, hey, the designer of this was this person. And I've been able to showcase and actually tell those folks who designed it for me. Why? Because I'm not the one paying for their salary, and they basically are a small business just like me, and they need word of mouth just like I need word of mouth. And they're more apt to then showcase and show love to me, telling people, hey, look at this awesome product, and how awesome is it the fact that, check out this shirt that I'm wearing that I designed, and look at the packaging. And then they're prideful of it. They're spreading the word. I'm spreading the word for them, and we're helping each other. And
I think that's a really cool point too. It's sort of illustrative of the small business community and sort of this indie community, the sort of, helping one another and all that. Like there's enough for everyone.
Correct.
And I think that's a really healthy way to do business.
Correct.
Though it seems almost a little antiquated, the style of keep everything for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's so I think that's nice to hear, actually.
And it's funny because that's actually the reason why that's why I don't eat Subway as much. And it was very hard for me because Friday was National Sandwich Day, and Subway was doing something awesome because they were doing like you buy one get one, and then like they were giving free meals out to
they actually did that. I heard.
And so
my dad was like, "Hey, buy one get one free. Let's go get a sandwich."
Exactly. Okay. And so everyone was talking about that. But for me, like I have a shirt that says, which I had, it was another shirt design that I did with Will from Noble Folk Design. I told him, I said, I want a shirt that says support local sandwich shops. Because that's what I do. I've taken the idea of my brand is what happens is people see my stuff and then they think, oh, I own a sandwich shop, which I obviously don't. And then they say, where do you eat a sandwich? Because they look at me and my nickname is Biggie, so they obviously know I know where to eat. So I tell folks, I said, hey, I'm like, why don't you come eat a sandwich with me? And what I do is I try to build community. I try to build community for my brand, but for other sandwich shops. And what I do this is something called Sandwich Eat Up. And every month I go to a different sandwich shop that's not a franchise, that's a mom and pop type place, and we eat sandwiches. And I do it as a community thing, way for people to get to know me, another way for those sandwich shops to showcase themselves, and maybe even get some of their customers to learn about me. But I do it as a way to kind of look at it as karma, you know what I mean? Like I help you, you help me, and that's something that I've kind of instilled even with me as a brand. When I have other folks coming to me and asking me about what my process is or who I go to, I give them some tips, like things that I did, but I want them to be able to do it. I'm not going to give you all the answers to the test, but I'm going to give you, the information that you're going to need to be like, hey, don't blow it all on, I have, you may have champagne taste, but you have a beer budget, work accordingly with that beer budget.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Did you guys, as Deli Fresh Threads, do anything for National Sandwich Day? I have to imagine that's a big one for you. We are ready to sign the petition right now for National Sandwich T-shirt Day to support you guys.
I love it.
So, but we ought to see if we can get a day lined up for you. But did you guys do anything fun?
Yeah, we actually, I did a bunch of stuff. So what I did was I do my largest sale of the year is on National Sandwich Day, obviously. And then we did a sandwich eat up event at one of my favorite sandwich shops. So from 7 to 9, Friday night, November 3rd, I basically had a whole bunch of folks. I publicized it as one of my monthly events, and that was like the big event for me to do that. And then during the course of the day, I would tell folks, hey, I make videos, and I basically tell folks, hey, listen, if you can't come to my event, that's fine, but go support another small business. Go eat sandwiches. Maybe wear your Deli Fresh Thread shirt. Take a picture. Take a sandwich selfie. Do something sandwich related to kind of showcase what I call the King of Meals is what I created as the hashtag for it is King of Meals. Is because I think you could have a sandwich for breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert. So you can pretty much have it
ice cream sandwich, obviously.
Yeah. Exactly. S'mores.
Ooh.
So
whoopie pies.
I gotta ask, what is your hot item? Is there one that stands out more than another? I noticed I like the what is it, bread pool, the Deadpool sticker.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's really cool. And then the that's my jam one with the peanut PB&J.
Yes.
As a DJ, I'm kind of biased to that one because he's got a love sandwich as a DJ.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many radio DJs have bought that shirt. And the reason that's pretty much right now my hot one is that's my jam is really hot. Everyone loves that one. The Cuban sandwich. That's like anyone's a Dolphins fan. South Florida folks go nuts to buy that shirt. I've done probably 4 reorders of that design. The Fluffernutter, just because it's a Boston Red Sox, and a lot of folks who are into Fluffernutter sandwiches, which is marshmallow fluff and peanut butter, are all people from up north. So therefore, a lot of them tend to be, from Massachusetts or be Red Sox fans. So it kind of worked out perfect for that. Those would probably be my biggest ones. And right now, I have 2 new ones that are about to come out that are already getting a lot of love, which I'm happy for. One of them is the Sloppy Joes. And what I did with that is I made it, I got inspired by Average Joe from Dodgeball. And so what I did was I thought to myself, like, average Joes eat sloppy Joes. And if you ever remember seeing the movie Dodgeball, they wear like a yellow T-shirt with a red average Joe's. Well, mine is actually a yellow T-shirt with a red sloppy Joe's.
Nice.
Which is also what you would make sloppy Joe's is with like tomato sauce, so it's red. And so I did that one,
I
and
see
then
that here. Yeah.
yeah, and then I was also inspired by I did another one that's coming out. It's called Bigfoot Subs, and it's just because when I go on vacation or go anywhere, my wife and I have a deal. She knows that I'm going to write about all the different. We're going to go to hit all the main sandwich places. I just promised her that I'm not going to eat every meal sandwich. So we kind of do at least like one. Maybe if it's a breakfast place, I'll do that. But when I go to certain cities, I'll do that, and then it gives me something to write about. So when I went to Portland and Seattle, I just was amazed by their obsession with Bigfoot. And so I was like, man, Bigfoot Subs, how cool would that be? Like, what if it was like a real place that you can buy? So I made a fictional place called Bigfoot Subs. And I actually worked with an artist from Portland, from Oregon, that actually designed it for me, because I thought it'd be even funner to do something like that. And I try to mix it up like that. I do little things like that where maybe I can find someone who's specific for a region and have him design it. Just so then it adds a little bit extra layer to it, showing that like I'm taking it to the next level. You know, not only am I talking about the sandwich, but I'm also using a designer based on that location.
So I'm from that neck of the woods, Seattle, Portland area.
Yep.
What joints did you hit up while you were there?
Oh man, I had so many good places. So one of them is called Pine Street. Is it Pine State Biscuits Company? Have you ever been there?
Yeah.
Holy moly! I must have eaten at 3 of their locations while I was there. Another one that I really liked was Lardo's, which was super good. There was one place that was by far my favorite. The only problem is they closed, which I was really sad to hear that they closed. They had like a little cart, and it was called Big Ass Sandwiches is what it was called. And that place was flipping amazing. Adam Richman, he talked about them and said they were amazing. And ironically, I created this thing kind of like, I don't know, like I found a whole bunch of cool like old sandwich shops, and I got their Instagram pictures and I copied them and I made a kind of almost like a black type thing framed. And one of the sandwich shops was actually that location, was that cart. So it was just really surreal to me. Out of all the places, I go to this place, and it was probably one of the best sandwiches I've enjoyed. And they unfortunately opened a brick and mortar store and then ended up closing, like almost a year later. So it made me really sad because they were in business for like 5 or 7 years as a cart, because that's one of the cool things about that whole Seattle, that Portland area is like they're not food trucks, they're like more like food carts, which is what I love.
They have a big little area there that has nothing but food trucks all over the place.
Yep, it's awesome. They're like little food pods.
There's a joint up in Seattle called Paseos, and they do Cuban sandwiches and Caribbean style sandwiches.
Oh, really?
They're so good. If you ever get back up there, check them out.
Oh, trust me, I definitely want to go. The other place that I went to that I loved was Salumi's. I've heard of them. Mario Batali's folks own that place. It's a little hole in the wall joint, like right near all the sports stadiums in Seattle, and we went and we stood in line with everybody else, and it's like this, unbelievable. My wife had like a porchetta sandwich, and I just said, like, whatever everyone else, what's the most popular thing? I want to eat that. And I just went to town. It was some good food.
Yeah, I love doing that, going in and asking what the hot item is and let them pick for you.
Well, hey, without getting too specific, can you talk about where you find your success? Is it online? Do you prefer sort of your in-person events like the sandwich meetups, trade shows, pop-up shops? Like, where's your, do you have a number one? Or, do you prefer one over the other, even if it's not necessarily the most profitable?
Yeah, it's a mixture. I will say this, like, I don't actually sell, and I joke around saying that I'm bad at business because I don't actually sell at my sandwich eat-up events. And one of them is because, the locations are super small. They could fit about 20 to, sometimes 20, 40 people. The second part of it is I basically want to make sure that I'm like showing that I'm a host. So I love my sandwich eat up events, but because of the fact that I have like a good support group that helps me with things, I'm a one man deli shop. So I mean, I am the, I joke around when people ask me how many people are on my team. I joke around and say it's me, myself, and Biggie Bread, and Biggie Bread is my mascot. So a lot of these things, I will say that I do really well. And for me, I do really well out in the public, like selling at like different, like indie markets and stuff like that. And the reason for that is, one, you visually get to see what the heck my brand's about. And then when you start seeing things like the shirts are wrapped like a sandwich, and you see the visual side of it, it shows you how unique and different it is.
Well, and I'm not going to lie too, it's got to be in part your personality, your attitude. I mean, you're Biggie, but you're also larger than life.
Yeah.
I mean, just in this conversation with you, I mean, we're having a blast. Yeah. I mean, the passion about sandwiches, what
exactly thing. Right. And that's the thing. Everyone's like, and I love the visual, being able to see someone walk when they're walking, because the way my setup is I have kind of like a backdrop, and the backdrop has my shirts hanging behind me in a tent. So when they're looking, a lot of times they're like, they see a banner in the front and they see Deli Fresh Threads, so they're like, okay, what the heck is this? And then you see
let's go get a sandwich.
See their eyes. What you do is you see their eyes. You see their eyes as they're walking, and you can track them. And so what I do is I make it a point not to be on my phone, because I actually want to see the interaction with folks. So then I'll tell them, like, hey, I bet you're wondering what the heck this is. Why don't you come on over? And then once I get like 2 people, then you start getting a conglomeration of people. And then it's basically when I get to show off and like tell people this is what it is and this is what it's about. And so a lot of people then are like, oh, this is really cool. So I will say that for me in the beginning, because of the way my branding was, it was really hard for me. It's going to be 5 years in January. And I didn't really start selling till probably about maybe about a year and a half ago. And it was just because of logistics. Really? I couldn't figure out how to logistically do what I do, because of the fact that there's a lot of preparation that needs to be done. So what I do is, because of the fact that I pack everything and I have handwritten notes and all these things, there's a lot of things that I just couldn't figure out how would I be able to pull this off. And then finally I just said, well, I'm going to do one and see what happens. I had a buddy of mine who pretty much is like, if I ever make it rich and I can do this, he's my first employee. So my buddy Brian basically was like, hey, let's go, let's do it. And so he was like, I'll help you out, we'll figure it out. And so I pre-wrote and I prepped. And I went to this like little food expo type thing, and I sold. And as time went on, obviously, I kind of was like, hey, this is something good. And so I made it a point. This year was like my first real year where I said told my wife, I'm like, hey, listen, I know I'm not going to do farmers markets every weekend, because I have a family, and I want to spend time as a family. But at the same time, I told them, I said, I need to do this. So what I did was I found markets that happen not every single time. So I do at least once a month, I sell somewhere out. And I do like a market, or I do like a lot of times they're like indie markets, or I'll do a pop-up shop at like a sandwich bar restaurant, because they'll let me. And so that's kind of what I've done. And I pretty much have done for like probably the last 15 months. I've been doing that, and that's been going really, really well. My online sales, they go well. I actually have a map. One of those like chalkboard maps, and it's funny because the Midwest, I have areas of that just have not, like Iowa and Oklahoma, all those areas. None of those areas want to have bought anything from me, which I think is hilarious. But I have this huge map that I basically have just been selling online, and so it's kind of cool to see all these people buying stuff and from all different areas, and I've had people internationally buy from me and stuff like that, which is always fun to see people that want to buy things like that, because it is so different.
Can you tell us just like a little bit more about the sandwich eat-ups or the get-togethers?
Yeah.
Do you have any grand plans, national tour, anything like that in the works?
Yeah, I saw something about maybe getting a food truck. And selling out of a food truck.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because sandwich eat-ups, I would love to get to a point where my brand is recognized big enough, or at least I'm recognized big enough to know that, hey, this guy knows good sandwiches, that I can do a food tour around. I would do anything, and that's one of the reasons why I write about different, every time I go to a different state or go somewhere, I write about where I eat, just because I want people to know good places to eat. And so, yeah, ideally, my grand scheme, I would love to be able to do like a huge, food tour where I'm eating different sandwiches in different states, and kind of having people and meeting folks. Right now, short term, I'm really playing with the idea of a food truck. I just think it'd be a fun thing to do, kind of like have a menu. You can order off the menu, and when you order it, you're actually getting just a packed wrap sandwich, just like you would if I bagged it. So everything wouldn't be a legit kitchen. So I'm playing with that. I've had some food sandwich folks actually talk to me about, hey, maybe we can team together and do kind of a mixture of you selling your stuff and me selling my stuff.
I was actually just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Remember Anderson Blue? We were talking to him about.
You know Anderson?
I do Anderson. I actually met Anderson at Creative South. I actually got to, because he and I were following each other, and I finally got to meet him and a bunch of others at Creative South this past year.
When we were having the conversation with him, he said something about partnering up with a guy, and they did a show together. And he had some sort of stick that he like. When they came in, they bought a ticket. It
was a ski lodge. I think it was like a ski lodge type thing, and it was like a winter themed type place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't help but saying, why aren't we making a TV show of this yet? I feel like we've got a show.
Yeah, and it's funny because I make it a point, and that's one of the reasons why I'm actually trying to do more video. I'm trying to get more comfortable with being able to speak, in front of a camera, and so that's one of the big things where I try and like I've joked around about doing something, trying to do more, live streaming of sorts, just because I think it is an avenue. We're definitely in a time right now where anyone can pretty much produce something or have something visually for someone to watch, video for them to watch.
Well, let's take that bit of the conversation offline. But actually, back in a previous life, we launched an app called Nom Nom Finder, and it was a app for locating food trucks.
No way.
And the business ended up not lasting very long. Most everybody had side jobs and stuff, and they couldn't really dedicate it to it, so it didn't stay very long. But we, in our short life, we got some really great connections with some of these like indie cooking channels. Not the Food Networks of the world, but there's hundreds of others. Let's talk collaboration. Okay. Let's see if we can figure out a way to get this food truck show on the road, because I think you've got a TV program. I think you've got the personality for it, and I think maybe we could do something. So let's take that off air. But I'd love to talk to you more about that.
I would love to. That'd be awesome.
So anyway, let's kind of a silly question. It's we've talked about a number of your different designs, but do you have a favorite design? Is it a bestseller, or is there, do you line up with your fan base? Do your fans buy the same shirts that are your favorite, or do you have one you prefer?
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of design in some cases like what I would want to wear. In some cases, I kind of go that route. There's some things, like, to be honest, like I'm not a Knicks fan, so it's painful to wear some of those sports shirts because I'm not a Knicks fan. But
the
pastrami and rye just fit so well that it just made sense. So some of those I don't, but I will say, like, the ones I wear the most probably are just like my support local sandwich shop, just because I love going to sandwich shops wearing that shirt. Just because they kind of were like, wow, where'd you get that? And that's kind of, and it's a kind of a nice, simple thing. I also love my Biggie breads. Like you mentioned, bread pool. The reason I've been doing a lot of the stickers like that is because, as a small brand, you don't want to spend so much money on things that may or may not work. So I kind of wanted to see what
stickers are fairly easy to get out with.
Exactly. And then you can see what the reaction is to see if people want it or not. Like, I really do think that bread pool will probably be a t-shirt. Maybe when the new Bread Pool movie comes out, I may do like a limited release of one of my maybe one of the stickers and make him into it. Same thing with like Darth Bread, those type of things. Like, those are all ideas that I've kind of like, that's the reason, like Biggie bread is actually me as bread. Is kind of what I did was when I doodled him, and I had my friend, his name is Lane Lee, designed it. I showed him my doodles, and my doodles was always a bread slice, and it was me as bread. And then obviously I live in Orlando, so he went with the hands of Mickey Mouse hands, or animated, character hands. So
Nice.
that's how Biggie Bread created. But Biggie Bread is a version of me, and that's why I like Biggie Bread. How he can just like a sandwich. When you make a piece of bread, it's a foundation, but you can create so many things on it. That's kind of what I went with him. That's why if you notice, there's a variety of different stickers how he can change from peanut butter and jelly, grilled cheese, s'mores, and all these other things, because I wanted him to. I notice sometimes mascots don't have that ability.
Well, and so for people who don't know or who are unfamiliar with the brand before today, Biggie Bread is the little mascot guy, the slice of bread that you see all over the website and stuff. And he's awesome. He's a fun little character. I love that guy.
Thanks.
So one last thing, and it's sort of a departure from everything we've been talking about, but it's kind of a fun fact or silly thing, is in closing, I wanted to ask you, we saw something about you had proposed to your wife in FHM magazine. Could you elaborate? And how we ended up doing that
can.
And why?
Yeah, I can definitely elaborate on that. So it was one of those. It was just a fluke thing. So at the time, FHM magazine, Fordham magazine, is kind of like a version of Maxim. And what ended up happening was it was one of those days where one of my buddies saw it, and they had a thing where it's like, hey, want to lose weight? Want to help us showcase it? We can, want to win like $5,000. And he's like, submit some pictures. And so I submitted like some fun pictures, like just making, kind of hokey fun pictures. And it just so happened that they, one of the persons on it, I guess, withdrew from it, and they ended up being one person short. And I was like the runner up, to go be part of this contest. And I was part of a 6-week contest. They basically paid for me to have a trainer, and the goal was whoever lost the most weight and percentage of body fat would actually would win $5,000. And so I guess there's always a silver lining. So what ended up happening was I technically won, but because of the fact that I was 1 week off, by the time they realized it, they had already told someone that they had won it, and it wasn't me. But what happens is during the whole time, I'm doing interviews with them, and they're asking me questions about like, hey, how's this week going? Like they're trying to get a progression. And the cool thing is during this whole time, I'm also in FHM magazine. So there's pictures of me, from the beginning. I was like at the end of this whole thing, I ended up being in FHM magazine, which is really weird. Like, no one wants to see me in the magazine, but I was in the magazine for like between me and my wife, we were in the magazine at least 5 or 6 times. But what ends up happening is during the interviews, they ask me, what were you going to do with the money? And I was like, if I win, I'm going to buy my girlfriend an engagement ring, and I'm going to propose to her. And so they were like, wow, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah, thanks. And so I find out that I lose. I'm really bummed about it, because especially since I knew I beat the weight that they had, that was posted, that the percentage and everything. But then the editor calls me up one day and goes, hey, you said something about an engagement ring, about proposing. He goes, we feel really bad. What if I can line up an engagement ring for you? Would you be interested? And I go, dude, if you do that, I am proposing on your magazine. And they're like, sold. And so like 4 weeks later, I get a call. They're like, we found a jeweler. They're going to donate the ring. We're going to you tell me what cut it is. We will send you, you send us a picture and, what you want to write, and we will post it in the magazine. And so I was like, okay. I'm thinking, what are the odds of this? Mind you, at the same time, people had seen me in the magazine, so I'm getting random phone calls, people seeing me at the airport, because that's usually where they would get the magazine, before they go on a flight, they're reading, because they had good articles, and they still exist, they just exist more in Europe. Anyhow, I end up proposing to my wife in the magazine, and and the funny thing is, when I go to propose, my dad goes to tell her, like, I had the whole family there, and it was like 4th of July weekend, and he goes to bring the magazine out, and he's like, hey, Kristen, look, Anthony's in the magazine, and my wife just goes, I've already seen him in the magazine. He's been on it like 3 other times. And then she opens the book. And when she opens the book, it says, it's like, if your name is Kristen, and it's like basically says, will you marry me? And there's a picture of me. Now, what's funny about the whole thing is, here's this sweet, sweet moment with me on my knee proposing, and then below me, being FHM, they're like, hey, there's a girl half naked on her boss's desk. So it's like, so it's just like the weirdest thing, because you can't really show it off to your family, because you're like, look, I proposed, and then they're like, half naked girl. My mom's like, don't show your grandfather this. So it was just hilarious. So when what I ended up doing was like cropping it and cutting it and framing it, so that way it would never show up that way. But they basically had us on again, like to see how we did, like if she said yes, and then they had us on again when we went on our honeymoon. It was pretty amazing for the fact that I was actually chosen, that they picked me to do this, and I had that opportunity. It was awesome.
Well, you better get on those guys. I imagine if they're bigger in Europe, there's got to be a ton of Sandwich Origins over in Europe.
Oh yeah.
So we got to get FHM on the mic and see if we can do some crossover in Europe.
I like that idea.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, man, we've taken up a bunch of your time today, and God, this has been a lot of fun. But,
sorry about all the technical difficulties.
No, man, it's perfectly fine. You guys were awesome.
So, but let's give you a few plugs and make sure people know where to find everything they can about Deli Fresh Threads. So we've got delifreshthreads.com. We've got at Deli Fresh Threads on Instagram, and then we have at Deli Fresh, but Threads is spelled a little differently on Twitter, right? It's at Deli Fresh THRDS.com.
Yep.
Or .com on Twitter. And but delifreshthreads.com is probably the spot to find him. And of course, if you Google Deli Fresh Threads, you find him without any trouble. Biggie, anything else you want to say? Parting shots? Anything else you want to say or talk about before we go?
Yeah, the only last part would be is if you decide, especially with the holidays coming, and you want something different, since I do personalize all my notes, I tell folks, if you decide to buy something for someone, make sure you put it in the notes to tell me who it's for, so that way I can be like, hey, Brian, Ryan thought you'd enjoy a Philly cheesesteak, and then I can put it in there, and that way it's actually labeled to Ryan and not Brian. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like things like that. I want people to, and then that way when I mail it to them, they don't have to worry about wrapping it or anything, because it comes in a box, you open it up, and there's your stuff. So, that's pretty much the big one. Other than that, if you got favorite sandwiches in your cities, by all means, I love hearing about them, because I'm looking to do more traveling, and so if I'm going to travel, I want to know where to eat, and so by all means do that. Or if not, if you're interested and you live all across the country, I do this thing with Biggie bread. It's like a flat Stanley, but it's a flat Biggie bread. And what I do is I send you one of my stickers, and then you can actually take him around the world. He's been to the Great Wall of China, been to the Taj Mahal, France.
Sounds like the 12th man flag for the Seahawks.
Yes, something like that. Like basically I want him to see the world. And then at the same time, by all means, take a sandwich selfie anytime you like.
Great. Well, I'll be sure I'll take a Biggie bread sticker with me to Barcelona this spring.
So you posted a photo the other day of a sandwich with an egg on it.
Yes.
And I got it. What was that? That looked delicious.
Yes. So I'm actually going to be doing that. One was at a place called Pig Floyd's, and ironically, that guy made what a common question I get asked is like, what's my favorite sandwich? And he actually was the creator of my favorite sandwich when he owned a food truck. Since then he sold the food truck and created a barbecue type place. And that was one of his sandwiches. It's called the Mata Hambre, which means hunger killer is what it means. And it is phenomenal. It's got a fried egg. It's got it's got brisket. It is flipping amazing. It's super good.
It looked like it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
sweet, man. So I guess if you want to participate with or get on Twitter or Instagram or any of that stuff, if you hashtag King of Meals, is a good way to participate. And it looks like some of those photos wind up on delifreshthreads.com, so that's a good way to get involved. Also, like we said before, just visit delifreshthreads.com or Google it. You'll find it.
Yep, and you can find me at djontic.com. Ryan, you can find him at R2 Media Group. And check out the show at eggscast.com.
All right. And with that, Biggie, thanks so much for your time, man. We appreciate it. It's been a ball.
And that third voice you've heard today is Clint.
Oh, yeah. Brother-in-law Clint on the mic.
So,
oh, and I do want to say, check out the book that Biggie mentioned, this Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. That guy, I mean, he's not for all people. He's got kind of a brash way of talking about things, but I think at the core, there's some really good information there, I think. So I think that's worth checking out.
Can I give a quick tip on that? If you're gonna get, if you don't want to read it, I kind of jokingly, you obviously support the man, but if you don't want to read it, what I've done is you actually, if you go to the very back of the book, they actually have about 25 tips that you can actually take a picture of and have to remember. That's actually what I've done is I've made copies of these of them, and whenever I need to kind of like a refresher, I just go back and look at those without having to read the book again.
Nice. I love it. That's perfect. All right, Biggie, and with that, we'll let you go, my man. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds like a plan, guys. Look forward to talking to you. Yep. Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Calling out to all area crew, we gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew, we gon' make it all happen right here, right now. I said, calling out to all area crew, we gon' make it all happen right here, right now.